Hello, everyone, and welcome to the course. My name is Dan Tui. I have been an adjunct instructor in philosophy here at Drexel since the late 90s. I've taught a number of different courses over the years here at Drexel, and I've taught this course, Philosophy 311, many times. I have to tell you, I'm not quite sure what the course is called at this point. I think of it in its old title as computer ethics, and I think of it also as digital ethics. Ethics and digital technology, anything having to do with the ethical issues that are raised by the digital computer. That being said, if you look at the content of the course week by week, what we will actually be reading for the course, it's obvious that we're focusing on artificial intelligence, AI. What exactly that means, AI, I'm sure that many of you have a more nuanced and informed idea of that than I do. From my layman's perspective, in one sense, artificial intelligence is always what the computer, digital or otherwise, was meant to be. That is, a machine of some sort that engaged in tasks which are thought to be traditionally the sole realm of human intelligence, natural intelligence. So even basic computing, from even as far back as analog computers, pre-digital computers, can be thought of as artificial intelligence, and I think in one sense certainly is. But I also recognize that there is a field or a kind of computer that does things which may be called different from the standard programmed computer that we're familiar with. It has been around for many, many decades. And again, pre digital computers, analog computers going back into the 19th century, which could be called artificial intelligence, demonstrate artificial intelligence. But I recognize that there is something new happening and having to do with computers that do things that we don't usually sort of associate with computers or haven't. Computers that can, quote unquote, learn and develop, computers that can engage in activities in natural language or other creative activities that we normally associate as being the sole province of human beings, and computers that may or may not display what we might call agency and autonomy. These are all big issues, philosophical issues, I would say. Whether or not we accept a computer being autonomous or creative, things like that will be part of the course. So there is a sense in which theoretically it's difficult. I find it difficult, at least, to define what artificial intelligence is with respect to computers. And also, but on the same time, there is a practical sense in which so-called AI has become a much more prominent part of our lives, especially with the introduction of ChatGPT in 2022 and 2023, which changed a lot. It changed the way that teachers teach, the way students learn, and the way that human beings communicate with each other, etc. So it is a real thing. Whatever it is, it's happening. And I thought that a computer ethics course certainly is not the only topic, but I would say it's the most um, contemporary challenge that we face from digital technology. So if you want to take a look at the left-hand side of the Blackboard site, you'll see that I've started the week one and week two in a certain way without even mentioning AI. The first is week one, looking at traditional ethical theories, really boiled down to their decision-making basics, and that would be Kantianism and utilitarianism, which are two of the most prominent ethical approaches that we have as human beings, at least philosophically. And week one is devoted to just getting an idea of what Kantian decision making would be and what utilitarian decision making would be, to get our notion of how classical ethics proceeds in dealing with moral problems. Week two is a very important part of the course, a reading of Hans Jonas's 1973 essay, Technology and Responsibility, Reflections on the New Tasks of Ethics, where, generally speaking, Jonas sort of pronounces that we've reached an age technologically in the development of human technology where our old ethics is no longer sufficient. And this is where the course, I think, comes into some focus. Jonas's thesis is that the power of modern technology has reached a point where we need a new ethics. Our old ways of dealing with ethical problems, when we put them in relation to the power of modern ethics, present wholly new problems that those old ways of dealing with ethical situations could not have possibly envisioned. And although his thesis is one of the growth of technology in general, I think it certainly applies to digital technology and to artificial intelligence. So you might say that one of the themes, maybe the major theme of the course, is asking, well, is really applying that thesis to artificial intelligence and asking ourselves whether the old ways of doing ethics really are sufficient for the kind of ethical challenges that artificial intelligence poses for us, and whether we really need to develop a new ethics. Weeks 3 and 4, both of them are called What is AI? We're looking at classic philosophical takes, theoretical takes on machine intelligence or artificial intelligence. The first, we'll be looking at Turing's famous paper from 1950, where he introduces the idea of the imitation game, came to be known as the Turing test, for answering the question whether machines can think. And I think that is the central question philosophically. Week 4, we'll look at John Searle's philosopher's famous Chinese room thought experiment, which he challenged the very idea of an artificial intelligence and pretty much said that it doesn't make any sense. So we'll be looking at dipping into some fundamental philosophical issues having to do with artificial intelligence. Weeks 5 through 7, you'll see, are all about the singularity. Maybe it's a big jump, but reading classic essays like Werner Vinge's The Coming Technological Singularity, and then Nick Bostrom's essay on ethical issues in advanced artificial intelligence, and then finally David Chalmers, an excerpt from David Chalmers' philosophical analysis of the singularity. All of these have to do with the singularity, and the singularity is an interesting concept. As we'll see from looking at its first mentions in the work of John von Neumann, I.G. Good in the 1950s and 1960s, it's a general thesis about the development of technology and its effect on human life. The idea of the singularity has become more and more associated with the specific idea of the emergence of a true artificial intelligence. That is, the emergence of a computer or digital or otherwise artificial person, a truly autonomous, rational, sentient, self-conscious being that is basically silicon-based. And what the effects of this would be on human life, on the world. Because, of course, the central concept of the idea of the singularity is not just the emergence of a true artificial intelligence, but of that quickly becoming a superintelligence, something that is intelligence on an order of magnitude much greater than human intelligence. In week 8, we'll look at the specific problem I'm calling the personhood problems. That is, whether or not the singularity actually happens. It may be that AIs become persons in some sense, at least legal persons, and that this is a profound challenge, because the idea of an artificial person, in the sense of a computer-based person, or a software-based person, or a silicon-based person, is a huge novelty that brings us back to the Jonas thesis, and of course the singularity does too. Finally, in weeks 9 and 10, we'll be looking at some of the costs, perhaps, of the emergence of artificial intelligence. Here, the moral and political costs in this essay called The Rise of the Robots and the Crisis of Moral Patiency as opposed to moral agency. And then maybe a little bit more down to earth the actual material costs in the development of AI. Certainly the costs in terms of energy and the environmental impact of that, but also some more sort of tangible costs to society from the development of AI. So that is the course. Please take a look at the introductory section. Obviously, you're watching this thematic course overview, but you want to watch the practical course tour, look at the requirements, and take a look at the syllabus. If you have any questions about what the course is really about, or any other questions about the course, please feel free to contact me by way of the email and cell phone number that I put on the syllabus.